The first time I realized something was off, it wasn't dramatic, no loud confrontation, no shattered glass, just this quiet, irritating feeling in my chest when I pulled into my street after 3 weeks on the road and saw a boat trailer sitting right in the middle of my driveway like it had every right to be there. And the weirdest part was, it didn't even look temporary. It looked settled, like it had been there a while, like it belonged. Now I travel a lot for work. I'm a logistics consultant, the kind of job where you're constantly flying out, fixing other people's inefficiencies, then moving on before anyone really knows your name. Which means my house, a small place just outside Denver, sits empty more often than I'd like to admit. And apparently, that detail mattered more to my neighbor than it ever did to me. His name's not important, but for the sake of the story, let's call him Travis. Late 40s, always in sleeveless shirts no matter the weather, the kind of guy who waves at you with 2 fingers but never actually stops to talk. Which, at the time, I thought meant we had an understanding. You know, quiet neighbors, mutual respect, stay out of each other's business. Turns out, we had very different definitions of respect. That first day, I just sat in my car for a second, engine still running, staring at that trailer, 20-something feet long, hitched to nothing, just parked there like it had grown roots. And I remember thinking, maybe there's a reasonable explanation. Maybe he had to move it for a day, maybe it's temporary. I try not to assume the worst right away. That's kind of a rule I live by, especially after years of dealing with corporate messes where jumping to conclusions costs money. So I parked on the street, grabbed my bag, and walked over to his house. I knocked, waited nothing. Knocked again. Eventually, the door cracked open and there he was, not surprised, not confused, just mildly annoyed, like I'd interrupted something more important than blocking someone else's property. I said, "Hey, man, I think your trailer's in my driveway." Keeping it light, giving him an easy out. He looked at me for maybe 2 seconds, then shrugged, like it was obvious. "Yeah," he said, "you're gone all the time. Figured it wasn't a big deal." And there was something about the way he said it. Not defensive, not apologetic, just casual, like he was explaining why he borrowed a pen, not occupied someone's property. I kind of laughed, not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do in that moment. I said, "Well, I'm back now, so I need you to move it." He nodded slowly, like he was humoring me, then said, "I'll get to it." And before I could respond, he closed the door. Just like that. Conversation over. I wish I could tell you I pushed harder right then, that I stood my ground. But the truth is, after weeks of flights and meetings, I just wanted to be home. So I went back, waited, an hour passed, nothing. Another hour, still nothing. By sunset, the trailer hadn't moved an inch. That's when the irritation started turning into something sharper, something that didn't sit right. Not just the inconvenience, but the assumption behind it. That night, I couldn't shake it, so I pulled up my security footage. I've got a basic camera system, nothing fancy, just enough to keep an eye on things when I'm away, and I started scrolling back, a day, 2 days, then a week, and that's when my stomach dropped. The trailer wasn't new. It had been there before, multiple times. I kept going further back, speeding through clips, watching days blur into each other, and there it was again, and again, and again. Different angles, different times, sometimes gone, then back again like clockwork. And then I noticed something else. People, not just Travis, but other guys, hauling coolers, loading gear, standing right in my driveway like it was some kind of shared space. At one point, someone even set up a folding table near my garage on my property, while I was halfway across the country fixing someone else's supply chain. I leaned back in my chair, just staring at the screen, feeling this slow burn build in my chest. It wasn't just that he parked there, it was how comfortable he was doing it, how normal it seemed to him. And the longer I watched, the clearer it became this wasn't a one-time thing, it was a pattern, a routine. By the time I stopped reviewing footage, it was past midnight, and I had a rough timeline in my head. This had been going on for months. Not days, not weeks, months. And suddenly that casual shrug at the door made a lot more sense. This wasn't him taking a chance. This was him continuing something he'd already decided was his right. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was angry, though yeah, I was, but because I was thinking about boundaries, about how people decide what they can get away with, about how absence, in his mind, had somehow translated into permission, and more importantly, about what I was going to do next. The next morning, I didn't knock on his door again. I didn't text, didn't leave a note. Instead, I made a call, because if there's one thing I've learned from my job, it's that when someone treats your space like it's negotiable, you don't argue louder, you get precise. And that call, that was the moment this stopped being a neighborly misunderstanding and started becoming something else entirely. The woman I called the next morning was someone I'd worked with before, not on anything personal, but close enough to know she didn't waste time or words. Her name's Melissa Carter, real estate attorney, sharp in that quiet way where you don't realize how much she's dismantling until you're already out of options. I told her the situation, kept it simple at first. Neighbor using my driveway while I'm away. I just need to know where I stand. And she didn't jump in right away. She let me finish, then asked one question, calm, almost casual. Do you have documentation that clearly defines your property lines? I said, yeah, I should, somewhere in the closing paperwork, and she told me to find it, send it over, along with any footage I had. Don't confront him again yet, she added. Just give me a few hours. There was something about that tone, not aggressive, not passive, just certain, like she already saw where this was going. So I dug through my files, found the property deed, the original survey map, scanned everything, uploaded clips from the cameras, timestamps, dates, anything that showed a pattern, not just an incident. It felt strange, sitting there documenting my own driveway like it was a case study, but at the same time, familiar. This is literally what I do for a living, identify inefficiencies, track behavior, build a narrative from data. The difference was, this time, it was personal. By early afternoon, she called me back. No small talk. Every inch of that driveway is yours, she said, fully within your boundary line. No easements, no shared access, nothing ambiguous. She paused for a second, then added, and based on what you sent me, this isn't occasional use. This is ongoing, unauthorized occupation. I remember leaning against my kitchen counter, looking out at that trailer still sitting there, sun hitting the metal like it had settled in for the day, and I asked her, so what are my options? She didn't hesitate. You have a few, she said. But if you want this to stop permanently, you need to approach it in a way that changes his incentives, not just his behavior. That line stuck with me. Change the incentives. Not argue, not complain, shift the equation. She laid it out clearly. I could demand immediate removal, sure, but given the pattern, he'd likely test the boundary again. Or, I could formalize it. Establish that the space had value. Assign a cost. Document past use. And if he wanted to continue, make him pay for it, legally, enforceably. It wasn't revenge. It was structure. By the time we hung up, I had a plan. Not emotional, not reactive, precise. That afternoon, I went out and measured the driveway myself. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to feel it, understand exactly what I was dealing with. 65 feet of concrete, clean lines, enough space for multiple vehicles, and right now, occupied by something that didn't belong to me. Or rather, something that belonged to someone who had decided it belonged there. Then I drove to a local hardware supplier and picked up a steel bollard. Heavy, industrial, the kind you see protecting storefronts or blocking restricted access, nothing decorative about it. I chose one with a locking mechanism, combination-based, simple but effective. The guy at the store asked what I was using it for. I just said, boundary clarification. He laughed, like it was a joke. I didn't. That weekend, I installed it at the head of my driveway. Took a few hours, digging, setting the base, making sure it was solid, not something you could just push aside or ignore. When it was done, it stood there like a statement, not loud, not aggressive, just undeniable. Right next to it, I mounted a sign. Clean, black lettering on white background. Private property. Unauthorized vehicles will be towed at owner's expense. No exclamation marks. No threats. Just information. Then came the part that mattered most. Melissa drafted a letter. Formal, structured, the kind of document that doesn't raise its voice but doesn't leave room for interpretation either. It outlined everything, property ownership, documented unauthorized use over an extended period, and two options moving forward. Option 1. Remove the trailer within 72 hours and cease all use of the driveway permanently. No negotiation. No return. Option 2. Enter into a rental agreement. $195 per month, plus a back payment of $2,145. covering the 11 months of prior use. When she sent me the draft, I read it twice. Not because it was complicated, but because of how simple it was. No insults, no accusations, just facts and consequences. We sent it certified mail, signature required, and then we waited. The first response came faster than I expected. That same evening, there was a knock at my door. Not tentative, not polite, sharp, repeated, like someone already irritated before the conversation even started. I opened it, and there was Travis, holding the letter in one hand, face tight, jaw set. "What is this?" he asked, waving the paper slightly, like it offended him just to hold it. I kept my tone even. "It's exactly what it says." He let out a short laugh, the kind that isn't really laughter. "You're seriously trying to charge me for parking in a space you don't even use?" There it was again, that assumption, that because I wasn't physically present, the space had no value. I leaned against the doorframe, not blocking him, not inviting him in either. "I do use it," I said. "You just chose to use it when I wasn't here." He shook his head, pacing a step or two like he was trying to process something that didn't fit his version of reality. "Man, I've been doing this for almost a year. You never said anything." And that's when I said it, probably the calmest I'd been the entire time. "Yeah, and that's on me. I didn't know. Now I do." For a second, he didn't respond, just stared at me, like he was waiting for me to soften, to back off, to turn this back into something casual. When that didn't happen, his tone shifted. "This is ridiculous," he said. "You're being unreasonable." I shrugged slightly. "Those are the options." He looked down at the letter again, then back at me. "You actually expect me to pay this?" "I expect you to make a choice," I said. There was a long pause, the kind where both people know the conversation isn't going anywhere new. Finally, he folded the letter, not neatly, just enough to hold it, and said, "I'm not signing that." "Then you have 72 hours, I replied. He stared at me for another second, like he wanted to say more, then turned and walked back toward his house, muttering something under his breath I didn't catch, or maybe I chose not to. Over the next few days, he came by twice more. Once to argue, once to try a different angle. "Come on, man, we're neighbors," he said the second time, tone softer, almost persuasive. "No need to make this a whole thing." I remember looking at him and thinking, it already is a whole thing. It just wasn't one for you until now. "I'm not the one who made it a thing," I said quietly. That didn't land well. He left frustrated, shaking his head, like I'd broken some unspoken rule. But what he didn't realize, what he couldn't see, was that this wasn't just about a driveway anymore. It was about a pattern that had gone unchecked, and the moment it finally met a boundary. And the real shift, the one that changed everything, didn't come from me. It came from the people who had been watching the whole time. What I didn't expect, what honestly hadn't even crossed my mind when I sent that letter, was that this whole situation hadn't been as invisible as I thought. See, when you travel as much as I do, you start to assume that anything happening around your house while you're gone just fades into the background, like white noise, like nobody really notices or cares enough to remember. But I was wrong about that. 2 days after that last conversation with Travis, I was out front adjusting the lock on the bollard, just making sure everything was set, combination working, mechanism smooth, when Mrs. Alvarez from across the street called out to me. She's been there longer than anyone else on the block, the kind of neighbor who knows everyone's schedule better than they do, always watering her plants, always watching, not in a creepy way, just present. She walked over slowly, wiping her hands on a towel, and nodded toward my driveway. "About time," she said, not unkindly, just matter of fact. I smiled a little. "Yeah, I guess it took me a while to catch up." She gave me this look, not judgmental, but knowing. "That trailer's been there on and off for months," she said, lowering her voice slightly, like it was something that needed to be acknowledged properly. Not just him either, his friends, too. Early mornings, late nights, they treat it like it's part of their place. I felt that same slow burn again, but this time it wasn't surprise, it was confirmation. "You've seen it a lot?" I asked. She nodded. "More than you'd probably like." Then she paused, studying my face for a second before adding, "You planning to do something about it?" I glanced at the bollard, then back at her. "Already did." That seemed to satisfy her. She smiled, small but genuine. "Good," she said, then turned back toward her yard like the conversation had reached its natural end. Later that afternoon, I ran into Marcus, The guy 2 houses down, mid-30s, works from home, always out walking his dog. He brought it up without me even asking. "Hey, you finally dealing with Travis?" he said, almost like he'd been waiting for it. I raised an eyebrow. Word travels fast. He laughed. "Man, we've all seen that trailer in your driveway. Thought you were just cool with it or something." There it was again, that assumption. Not just from Travis, but from everyone. Absence equals permission. Silence equals approval. "Yeah," I said. "Turns out I wasn't." He nodded, a little more serious now. "Good." Honestly, it was getting kind of bold, like he stopped even pretending it was temporary. That phrase stuck with me. Stop pretending. Which meant at some point, there had been at least a thin layer of awareness, a line he knew he was crossing, and then, over time, that line just disappeared. By the end of that day, I'd had 3 separate neighbors, without prompting, confirm the same thing, the timeline, the frequency, even specific instances that matched my footage almost perfectly. It wasn't just evidence anymore. It was a pattern everyone had quietly witnessed. And whether Travis realized it or not, his version of events, the one where this was casual, harmless, no big deal, didn't hold up outside his own head. The 72-hour deadline came and went. The trailer was still there. On the 4th day, I made the call. Not dramatic, not angry, just the next step. The towing company said they could have someone out within 24 hours. I gave them the details, confirmed the location, then hung up and went about my day like I would any other. That evening, there was another knock at my door. This one was different. Slower. Measured. I opened it, and Travis was standing there again, but the energy had shifted. Gone was the irritation, the defensiveness. In its place was something else, something quieter, heavier, like the reality of the situation had finally caught up with him. He held the letter in one hand, unfolded this time, slightly worn at the edges. "You actually called a towing company?" he asked. "I did," I said. He exhaled slowly, looking past me for a second, like he was buying himself time. "That thing's not cheap to move," he said, almost to himself. I didn't respond right away. Just let that sit there. After a moment, he looked back at me. This is a lot over a driveway, man." I tilted my head slightly. "Is it?" Another pause. Longer this time. Then he nodded, almost reluctantly. "Yeah, I guess I pushed it." That was the first honest thing he'd said since this started. He stepped back a little, shifting his weight. "All right," he said. "Let's say I sign this, we good?" I met his eyes, steady. "We're clear on the terms, yeah." He hesitated, then gave a short nod. "Okay." The next day, he came back with a check. $2,145. Back payment. No argument. No commentary. Just handed it over along with the signed agreement. His signature a little heavier than necessary, like he was pressing the moment into the paper. I looked it over, made sure everything was in place, then stepped aside as he walked past me to start moving the trailer. For the first time since I'd gotten home, it left my driveway because he chose to move it, not because I asked. And for a few days, that was it. Quiet. Normal. The space empty again, but this time, it felt different. Defined. A week later, the first payment came in. $195. Right on time. Then another the next month. And the month after that. The agreement held. There was one clause in that contract, the one Melissa insisted we include, the one I almost thought was overkill at the time, that changed everything. Miss a single payment, and the bollard stays locked permanently. Towing initiated within 24 hours. All costs his responsibility. No grace period. No negotiation. He's asked me twice to remove that clause. Not aggressively. Not like before. More like someone testing if the boundary is still there. Both times, I gave him the same answer. No. Because here's the thing. This was never really about the money. The $195 a month, the back payment, that's just the visible part. What this was about was the moment someone decides that your absence gives them access, that your silence means consent, that something you own becomes something they can use simply because you're not there to say otherwise. And I'll be honest, part of me understands how it got there. Not agrees with it, but understands. Because when a line isn't enforced, it starts to blur. Then it fades. And eventually, it disappears. Until someone redraws it. Now, every time I pull into my driveway, I see that bollard solid, unmoving, exactly where I put it. Not as a barrier, but as a reminder of what happens when you let things slide a little too long. and what it takes to take them back. Travis still parks there sometimes, legally now. Paid, scheduled, documented. Same space, different meaning, but I'll tell you what still lingers. Every now and then, I catch myself wondering, if I hadn't come back when I did, how much longer it would have gone on. Another month? 6? A year? At what point does something stop feeling like it's yours, if someone else is using it more than you are? And here's where I'm curious what you think. Was I too strict? Or did I just finally draw a line that should have been there from the start? Because I've got a feeling. I'm not the only one who's come home to find someone else getting a little too comfortable with something that wasn't theirs. So tell me, what would you have done?